We touched on probably one of the biggest part in resolving some of our issues, but I wanted to touch on some of the actual issues
Okay.
as well. Lately, at least in LA, I don't, where are you located?
I'm right outside of LA, about 60 miles.
Oh, okay. So lately, there's been a lot of violence out here. We just saw recently there's been a couple shooting on, entertainers, and one specifically just got killed while having lunch. And gang violence has been something major in our community. It's not just in America,
Mm-hmm.
because where I'm from in Jamaica, like sometimes there's wars in my neighborhood. I can't even go there, like it's like that there too. So this isn't just a America issue with our community. It's
Nope.
really global. So, how do you think we can go about fixing some of these issues with gang violence?
So we talked about the first piece of that, right? Because it once you resolve that relationship issue between that child and that parent, right? What emerges for that child is a level of self-love, a level of self-worth, a level of self-confidence, a level of self-courage, whatever, so that's because that once that gets in that child's heart, or even when it got in mine at 40, my love for people changed. Like, you naturally love people, you naturally value life. I spent 24 years in the military. I was
Mm.
trained to kill another human being, whether that human being was labeled as a terrorist or whatever, right? So now we're talking about our language and how we talk and how we uh, objectify is the conversation that I use. We objectify one another.
Oh,
If I
that's true.
objectify you as a black woman, then I could talk to you like we talk about black women in any context I choose. But you're a human being first. And if I look at you from that perspective first, then we're connected. So
No,
then
that's
why would I want to bother you? Why would I want to harm you? Why would I want to do something to you that would impact your life because you're connected to so many people in your life? But see, when you're in a survival state of mind, you don't that stuff is not there. It's there, but it's suppressed because now you're in this like I got to get mine. And so our society, um I'll put it this way, even the philosophy that the United States was ran on, that democracy, I do not like that term. Like, I do not like this whole democracy conversation because when you start to peel off where it comes from, it's an old Greek philosophy. It's the spirit behind it is a selfish spirit because it's self-preservation, it's self-accumulation, it's the entrepreneur, like it's all about yourself. And that mindset perpetuates that view of I got to get mine,
That's true.
right? So we grew up, we were born into this conversation. We didn't none of you and nobody on the planet created this. This philosophy is a dead man's idea that still rules the country. And it doesn't work. It just and we know it doesn't work. And that's what I believe we're all pointing to when we say that this system doesn't work over here, this system is doing this system doesn't. Well, yeah, because those systems are designed to suppress, to for them to have the power, for them to have the control. For them, it was never for us because
That's
that's the spirit behind how it was designed. You know, aspirations. They didn't think that we was going to be we wanted to be a part of that stuff, right? It would sound good. It was for them, but they didn't realize that we wanted to be included in that too. Like, we have aspirations about life and we want to experience, not just do the stuff, but we want to experience it too. But some of those systems don't even allow you to experience because they're so traumatic, they're so emotionally charged, how they're talked about, that you're even if you give us inclusion with stuff to do, if I don't feel like I'm included, if I don't have a sense of belonging within myself, It doesn't matter what laws you pass and change for us. So again, it goes back to us as the individual person on how do I think about the system, right? And so
Yeah.
how I think about the system is going to allow me to manage, see what I need to take on around that system, but not have the system oppress me anymore. So the dialogue around those systems have been such a suppression, such an emotional charge, such a reactive state of mind that that's what we hear when we grow up. When our parents talk about slavery and they talk about the Jim Crow laws and they talk about all the stuff they went through, it's emotionally charged. And if I hear that story at 9 years old, guess what? I inherit that conversation, and I'm mad about it too at 9.
Yeah.
Never really getting to develop my own perspective of that, my own views of that, my own knowledge of why we don't like the police. Not because they did something to you, because they pulled you over. You was driving with your license suspended and you knew it, so you took the risk, right? You knew your tags was expired. But we don't talk about that part. We don't talk about that part. We're not honest about our actions because there are consequences. I know that if I get in my car and drive to LA and I get stopped and my license is suspended, they could take my car. That's the law. I'm not gonna get pulled over and be like, why you stop me for? Why you do? I didn't do nothing. Like there's still a level of self-responsibility. And I believe that too can be taught once you deal with all the stuff that's in our hearts and our minds about why we don't belong. And I believe for our Black community, that is the biggest sense of belonging that we want to be a part of, that preferred group. But we're already a part of the preferred group. We're already included, but the emotional stuff that's been taught to us and talked about us is emotionally charged. So we're not going to experience being included. We don't feel it. We don't feel it, even though we already are, but we just don't feel it. And I believe if people look at their feelings, then you're looking at, that's what I'm saying. You're looking at how I feel about that law or how I feel about society versus what's really going on in my life. And if I change how I view that system, then it doesn't have me. I'm not triggered by the system. Now I can figure out what do I need for my life to make this work as I look at how do we change that system. And so we don't agree. We don't agree as a society.
Oh, that makes sense. I guess then with any issue in the Black community, it all is just gonna piggyback to that self-worth, that that relationship between our parents and the child, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we can't also deny the fact that, you know, as much as we want to think things like racism doesn't exist anymore, it does. Some people won't hire you because your skin tone has some melanin in it. You know what I'm saying? So how do we combat that?
But so here's the, and so when you say that to me, right? Only because I'm in the space that I'm in, it doesn't bother me, right? Because if I really believe, if I discover, well, why was I born? Right? Now you want to go to the spiritual aspect of it. Why was I born? Is there a purpose for my life? And why would I be looking for a job from you if I discover what do I care about? Now you talk about being forced with a mindset of get a job so you can eat. That's a survival state of mind. There's at the end of that, sometimes there's no fulfillment in that because I gotta work. My parents said I gotta get a job because I gotta go this and this. So you're not even being self-fulfilled. You're trying to figure out what satisfies your parents. So again, for me, if I self-discover my own purpose, my vision, my passion, I could get a job in doing something like that for myself. I could get a job and collaborate with you, and we could create partnerships, and we could work together, and then we don't have to be worried about the man who doesn't want to hire me because I'm Black. Now we could deal with it. We could, deal with that. Hey, why is that your policy? What's going on? And then you're gonna hear some stuff that's probably not even the policy, is how he feels about us. Then now you talk about the emotional wounds, right? On the poor whites. See, they don't tell the truth about where they came from, right? They don't tell the truth that their ancestors were Irish and Polish and German and Jewish, who were dealt with their own traumas, right, in their own way. Not comparing traumas, but they also dealt with traumas in their own way, running from countries that they were trying to survive for their families to come here to have a chance. But they brought those attitudes and those mindsets and those traumas with them, right? So, but we don't talk about that part. See, if we talked about all of it, then we would realize that, hey, that Irish owner, right, he got wounds too, and they're not personal to me, right? Because if you look at, I went to TV broadcasting school, and it just changed I can't watch TV or movies the same anymore, right? But when you look at the Italian movies, the Irish movies, the drug dealers, they're so romantic. They're romantic, right? But then you put a New Jack City on there, it's the same conversation, but ours is savage. So you have a romanticized gangster who's chopping up, shooting people, but it's romantic. But for us, we're savages. And just alone how that stuff is portrayed, and again, it's part of that media process, right? And so to me, all of that plays a role in now how I'm going to look at people, how I'm going to associate to people. But at the core, they had potato farms. They were doing stuff, when they came here to agree to work off their, how they got here as second class. And then they were put in charge of us in the slavery times, right? So it's like all of that, you have to be able to sort through that stuff for your own mind to find your own level of freedom in those conversations, because there's freedom in those conversations. Slavery was what it was, but what about their strength? What about their prayers? Their prayers were answered because you and I are here right now talking on this Zoom thing because of what our ancestors went through and what they fought for. Now it's our turn. So what are we going to do? What am I going to do for my grandchildren? I don't want them having these conversations when they're in their 40s. They're 3 and 8 months. Like, I don't want them having these conversations. They're going to have their own generational conversations. And I best believe that my daughters will teach them not what to think, but how to think. And I believe once we start to teach people how to think about society and themselves, then there's freedom in that. And I came on the line saying that there's freedom on the other side of these conversations, but you got to stop pretending like you're okay.
Yeah, that's true. One thing I want to touch on, I know you said you were divorced and but you still seem to be very active in your kid's life. And one of the bigger things we have is a lot of our men are not active in their children's life. They're not, regardless if the relationship works out or not, I don't think that should affect you being in your children's life or not.
Yeah.
I guess I wanted to ask, like, after, your relationship ended, what was your mind frame that caused you to say, hey, I'm gonna be in my kid's life and I'm gonna set these foundations for them, and I'm gonna help them push forward and things like that. Because I feel like a lot of our men, it just seems like they struggle with that. Like they struggle with understanding that regardless of whatever with your children's parents, you still should try to be a part of their life. You still should try to instill certain things in them. So I don't know. I think it would be helpful if you can explain from your perspective, like what caused you to um be a part of your kid's life and things like that.
So I would take you back. We've already covered the parents, right? So
Yeah.
now we're gonna go to our peer age, right? And then our peer age is, for me, is where I can't talk to My dad doesn't love me, and my mom abandoned me, right? So now I'm 14, and I'm going to my peers, and I'm looking for belonging and acceptance and for all of that because now I don't get it from my family. So now I'm vulnerable and open to, hey, I know I'm gonna find it here, and we find it in our friends, but then something happens, and so you find that first girlfriend, or we deal with the crush. Let's deal with the crush that you have all these feelings and emotions for, but you never tell that person. Like you have that crush, right? That's emotional. But then you meet somebody, and you're like, okay, no, she's my girlfriend. But then my behavior, no one's taught me how to be in a relationship. I'm 14 years old, so what the heck am I worried about a relationship for anyway? But that's human nature, and my behavior is going to come from my learned behavior of my environment, or I'm going to be looking for that void in that person that will never give me that void because the void is not in them, the void is in me. So you might meet that person that does that thing for you, that feeds that monster inside of you, and then when they stop doing it, then that's not the person anymore, right? So all of those layers um, impact our experience. So as a 14-year-old, I had a girlfriend. She said I wasn't paying attention to her. I played basketball before school, during school, after school. And then I don't even know how she became my girlfriend. I can't even tell you. All I knew is one day we was walking to class together, and then that was it, right? And then she told me at least 2 or 3 times that, hey, you're not paying attention to me. And I'm okay, 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 okay. But my identity was in the basketball guy, right? Because that's where I was accepted in junior high with my friends. And so one day my friend's like, hey, you seen your girl? I'm like, nah, I haven't seen her today. He's like, yeah, because she's talking to Sean. What? So I go and I find her like probably like sixth period when school's over. I'm like, what happened? She's like, I told you, you weren't paying attention to me. And I begged her, please, please, please give me another chance. And she's like, no, you're not the guy for me. And at 14, boom, I'm not gonna be vulnerable, and I gotta defend myself. And I walk home. Now, tell me, I'm living with at 14. My dad doesn't love me. My mom abandoned me. And now in relationships, I can't be vulnerable. And I got to defend myself. So what happens to the next girl I meet? Guess what? I'm not going to meet her because I'm not going to approach another woman because for me now, a woman chooses a man. So then I'm going to, if she's got to come and talk to me if she wants to give me the green light, all of that stuff. But then you meet someone, one day you have courage and you meet that, you see that, oh, I got courage, so I'm going to go talk to her. And then the cycle continues. And then don't have a child. and so that's the point where I'm saying it's still the internal dialogue issues, the wounds that we deal with, that we don't deal with, and then we bring a child into it. And now I love you, but I don't like you. And we probably was never going to work out anyway because what I'm feeding from you and what you're feeding from me are the voids. And when those things stop, we don't get along. So we have a lack of dialogue skills. We have a lack of communication, people call it. Like there's a lot that puts that pressure in there. And then I walk away mad or frustrated and anger. And so I'll deal with it later.
No, that's true.
But that doesn't work. So to me, it's still the wounds that we carry. And then you just add a child, you add getting married, and you're still not being honest with yourself and being honest, but you want to be with some because we want to belong. I mean, that's a human nature function. And if it's stuff in between that you're not okay with in your own mind, people pretend for 20 years that everything's fine and they get divorced. We could pretend really good and we tolerate real well, but we're still not being true to ourselves, and that one day will cause that relationship to end. And so when for my own self, I was married twice. That was I was 21, I was 19 the first time, just joined the military. That was that. And then later I got married again, but that's when I started dealing with my internal stuff that started to show up even more. Like I loved her, but it was like I just wasn't happy with myself. And then when my career ended, then it was like life is over. And so I sabotaged, I sabotaged. I sabotaged every relationship, put it that way. From that 14-year-old decision was each relationship was sabotaged because how that girl left me, that's what I'm living into. Well, you're gonna leave me too. So one day we're fine. And then one day my mind says, oh, that remember that pain you felt at 14? Oh, we can't feel that. Not today. I'm 23. Not today. Well, oh yeah, because she's gonna leave me. But I never have a conversation with you. I never say, hey, are we okay? Are we good? Because I got some stuff going on and I'm not sure. But we don't do that. And if I believe what my mind tells me, then I'm gonna react to that. And that's what I did. And that's how my relationships failed until I got educated and I was willing to do the work to see where's that coming from. And I could trace it all the way back to my mom. And then I had to challenge that story about my mom, which my mom never, I was never abandoned. I was never abandoned. But an 8-year-old who doesn't have a relationship to time, 90 minutes seems like 20 hours.
True.
So then I had to go back and then I had to call ex-girlfriends. I had to talk to my ex-wives and be like, hey, please forgive me. I just discovered some stuff. And this is the behavior that you saw, and I acknowledge it. And I had people tell me, hey, I knew you was crazy. Just don't call me no more. But I asked for forgiveness.
Yeah.
And what that did was it set me free, but it also could set them free because now when Farron comes up, oh, he's a jerk, but he asked me for forgiveness. You believe that?
No, yeah.
That's a totally different conversation now.
That's so true.
Totally different. We talked about carrying that weight, right? So we release the weight from ourselves, but it also gives that person an opportunity to be released from whatever they're carrying. And so yes, when you ask for forgiveness, some people are still not going to want to talk to you. They're not going to want to be your friend, but you've altered what's going on in their mind just by asking for forgiveness. And it changes the dynamic. So and for the men part, like a lot of us didn't have role models. A lot of us didn't have our parents, our fathers didn't talk to us about relationships. Our fathers didn't sit us down and talk about sex. Most of the time we learn from sex from TV, movies, magazines. It's also our view of sex is corrupted. Porno and all that stuff. So even when it comes to having a child, that's a consequence in some cases of when two people have sex and you're not understanding what you're doing in the process, and that child can come from this one time. But we don't, if the child or the teenagers didn't have those conversations truly with the parents, then I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm not even thinking about the consequences. So so this is our society, and so now we're trying to figure out how to correct it. But I still believe we can correct that as well, because again, now you're talking about, now that the childs are born, now you're talking about how do we heal that person to have his own self-love for himself, so that he can then in turn have the love for that child and even the child's mom in a level of, hey, I still care about y'all. Yes, this is where we are, and I want to take care of my child. And I had to do that because I did it with my parents, and I saw my responsibility in my daughter's lives, and I didn't want them to go through what I went through. So it still stems from the person, and and I really believe it still stems from the man, because the man is the one who's the foundation for that family. He is the one who can carry that weight. But if you don't have that in yourself as self-worth or self-love, then it's all survival. It's all survival state of mind. And I'll eat my arm off before I before I give you child support. I'll eat my arm off first, right? Because I gotta survive. And it's a selfish mindset.
No,
But it
it
can be
really
healed.
is.
It truly can be healed. It really can.
You know, it can be. I guess it's like for me as a woman, and they say women are more connected to kids. I don't have kids and yet. I've, you know, been, with all the parental issues I had, I was like, yeah, I'm not bringing kids into poverty like my parents did. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm gonna be careful out here and make sure I don't, that was me just analyzing my parents and what they went through and saying, I don't want that for my kids. I want better for my
Mhm.
kids. And I just cannot imagine, like, I see so mostly men, I mean women do it too, but mostly guys that abandon their children. I just, it's like it doesn't make sense in my mind. And I know, in like me talking to my dad and stuff, like a lot made sense as far as like why he had so many baby mothers. Like his father was the same way. And
Mhm.
so he thought it was normal. Why does he have, certain addictions? His father is the same way. So, that part of it made sense. But the part as far as him being abandoning his kids, like his other siblings are not like that. So I was confused, and so for me, it's like I still try to figure out, like, okay, why do so many men just abandon the kids? So that's why I asked that question, like, because I'm just like, to me, I just can't imagine leaving, if I had a child, leaving them and like not, helping out and stuff like that.
Oh, best believe that the man is not happy about it. Best believe that it's like I'm a person that's proud of that.
Mhm.
Again, you got to talk about where that environment where we came from, and so our environment shapes us. And if that's what your environment, if that's what the examples you saw, whether you have six children raised with the same mother and father, each child has a different view of each parent in their own way. So how you see your mom and dad, your siblings not going to see them in the same way because you're viewing them from a different way. My three daughters, when I took the communication class, I asked them, "What do you want me to give out of this communication course I'm taking?" And guess what? Each one of them gave me a different thing about communicating with me. And so I had to go in this class thinking each one of them pointed out and why I behaved the way I behaved in those communications. And I was able to discover them because I saw my behavior and I saw my responsibility in how I thought about some things, which was kind of narrow-minded. My oldest daughter says, "Find out how come you cancel plans all the time." I was like, "What?" So then when I was in the course and I put my life in those conversations, I saw where she said, because I had this view that when I got them together, my whole intention was that they had a relationship. So if one canceled, that's not the plan. The plan is for all of y'all. So I never thought that I could just go hang out with the other ones then. Whoever did want to still go with the dad, let's go. But I didn't do that because my plan was everybody together. So that's why she pointed out, well, why do you cancel your plans? Well, because how I viewed getting y'all together was that your sisters had a relationship with each other. But I didn't even think about how they wanted to spend time with me. So she was valid in her view of me.
Mhm.
And she is the oldest and she is the one that says, I forgive you, but I'll deal with you on my terms. And I had to accept that because of whatever my behavior that kind of put that in her mindset. So she has to figure out that for herself when she's ready. But I ask for forgiveness. We're good. But if she talks to me on her terms, and if she calls, I will pick up the phone every time.
Yeah.
But those are
And
the
and
things.
I think it's so important too that you ask for forgiveness, because I think a lot of parents, they just expect their kids to get over it, but they're not
Yes.
actually like um really apologize. It's like they're apologizing, but they're not. Like,
Yeah.
I don't
See,
know how to
and that's
explain
and
it.
no, no, you're right because as a parent, we disappoint our children. We just you we get we the parent we do disappoint our children, and if you don't acknowledge that disappointment, your words, your we call it your word is bond. Your word is no good with that child anymore, because you've said you're gonna do this and you're gonna do this, but you don't do it, and you don't acknowledge your mistakes or your disappointments or your mishaps with the child. Then again, whatever, dad. So when it's really a serious conversation that needs to be had, guess what, man? Whatever. You ain't gonna come anyway. You ain't gonna pick me up. You ain't gonna give me no money anyway. Like you ain't, because they already have this. Your word don't mean nothing. So sometimes, as I tell with parents, you gotta go and ask your child, hey, have I ever disappointed you? And be willing to listen, because that you're gonna hear some stuff that you're gonna be like, to you, it's not a disappointment. And that's where perception, interpretation, perspectives all come into place, because that perception of that child to parent is a totally different view than the parent to the child. And we don't sometimes allow that child to express themselves and call us out on stuff that's really what they're really valid points about us. But I'm the parent, you're the child, and it's a one way because I said so. And that's emotionally damaging by itself. So now we ain't talking about slavery. We talk about the emotional damage of the child to the parent. That is the two most important people in the life of that child, is the mom and the dad. And if I can't talk to you because you want to control the conversation, or because how you was raised and it's a one way, I'm the parent, you're the child, do what I say, that those old conversations don't work. And it's messed up our society.
No, it really has. And so many people want to live in the olden days. And I'm not saying there aren't certain things that are valid, but it's like there's a lot of toxic things too. Like a lot. Just because you were taught that doesn't mean it was right.
That's what I said.
And I think it took my mom a lot of years to figure that out. And when we talk now, it's like she knows, yeah, I didn't know any better. Like she'll just admit like I didn't know any better. And I'm just like,
Yes, that's good. She's free. She's freeing
you
herself
know,
too. You're
yeah.
becoming free and she's freeing herself. And that's where love starts to get present, because now is you're not holding on to those things that you've wanted some answers, and sometimes there's no answer. Sometimes it's just the way life was, and as a child we have to be able to, you know, we can teach our children, hey, in life sometimes there's no answer, and this is just the way it is. So you can either try to find an answer and deal with that and be stuck there, or you can just accept it and move on and figure out, the next thing. And a lot of times I think, not that I think, but a lot of times I notice, we don't tell the truth about with our children. Like, hey, everybody's not going to love you. Even as adults, everybody's not going to love you, like you, accept you, be your friend, talk to you. Like, everybody's not, that's not realistic. But if we don't do that, the child doesn't develop a level of self-confidence. So when that person says, I don't want to talk to you, okay, cool, I want to be your friend, okay, cool. Not my whole life is stuck because in our friend, like, no, but that's self-esteem, that's self-confidence, that's self-love, that we can help that child, that adult person, discover it. You can't tell them what it is. They have to be able to look in their own life and figure out where it's coming from and what's blocking it, so they can discover it. And when you discover your own self-love, nobody can take it away from you.
That is so true. That is very, very true.
But these are the conversations that you said from the beginning, that we don't have these. We react to stuff.
Yeah.
We react to life because of the experience, and we want loyalty, we want trust. But I'm looking for loyalty that I don't even know what it feels like myself. So I'm looking for you to show it to me, but then your view of loyalty is different than my view. So then we got to get a dictionary, and we got to, what's the definition of loyalty? Then, okay, then what does that mean to you? And what it means to me. So now we don't even have the same agreement on what loyalty is. So then now we can talk about loyalty, not just expect you to just be loyal to me on how I perceive it. So like I said, those are the things that I believe we could correct, and life would start to be different.
No, that's so true.